All right, it's the one and only King516, live and direct and live in the mix. This is the Swish Flames podcast. Holla at your boy. Hit me up on Twitter at Swish Flames or at King516. And don't forget to check out the website at www.swishflames.com. That's www.swishflames.com. All right, so please be sure to make sure you check out all those places and support the podcast. Make sure you hit us with a follow and all the likes. So we're here live and direct. Today's subject matter is going to be the NBA playoffs, good or bad. That's the NBA playoffs, good or bad. And so we're just trying to see, how everybody feels out there about the playoffs this year. So let me just lead off with how I feel in particular. In all honesty, I'll be real honest with you guys. I think the NBA playoffs have been extremely good. It's been highly entertaining. I mean, these playoffs compared to previous playoffs in previous years, I think this has been one of the best playoffs I've seen in a little while when it comes to NBA basketball. So I definitely do appreciate the hard work that I'm seeing out there. I definitely appreciate things that are going on out there, the way these players are playing hard. The facts that some of the main people, this is probably one of the few seasons that I haven't been able to predict at least one of the teams who are going to be in the finals. If you ask me in the beginning of the year, I was thinking Lakers, definite. Lakers or Clippers, you know what I mean, from the West. And the Nets, I was waiting to see how they were. I was waiting to see if KD came back healthy. And then once they got James Harden, it was like, okay, Lakers or Clippers are going to go against, either one of those teams are going to go against the Nets. And I think most people felt like if you asked them who was going to win the championship, most people who were being realistic would have said one of those three teams. And the fact of the matter is, all of those guys are eliminated. So we're going to have a new champion this season. And so I think that's good for the NBA. I think it also is going to help with some of the intrigue for next season when it comes to the NBA. And next season, with some of these big heavyweights that have been knocked out, they'll come back. Golden State Warriors with Klay Thompson will come back. And so next season should be even that much more entertaining. I know some people will say, well, the injuries, and I do agree, the injuries have taken away some of these star players. And yes, that does take away from some of the products. So that is an issue. And so some of the knocks I've heard, people say is the injuries, and they feel like, certain teams probably, and some people feel like those contenders that I listed between the Clippers, Lakers, and the Nets would be much further along if injuries didn't take them. But the one thing I'll say about injuries, I understand that is, we don't want to see players go down. We don't want to see these players get hurt because of injury. But we also know that injury is just a part of the game, and it's just a part of the game that we have to deal with. So I'm not going to make excuses for what's going on, but ultimately just having some new teams in the finals, some new teams move on that haven't been this relevant for so long. You think about everything the Hawks have done, some of these teams. I was just looking at a stat, and the last 8 playoff teams that were left in this year's finals, I was just checking some stats, and between all those teams in my research, the last team to win in those last 8 playoff teams, and let me just list those teams out of the Clippers, 76ers, Hawks, Suns, Jazz, Nets, Bucks, Nuggets. Those last 8 teams, it was actually the Sixers who were the last to win a championship. And the Sixers won a championship in 1983. That's 38 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. So you could only imagine having something 38 years ago was the last time any of these any of these teams have won. So with the Suns advancing to the finals, we remember Charles Barkley, Dan Marley, Kevin Johnson's Suns team in the early 90s. They made it to the championship, but they lost to Michael Jordan's Bulls. But the actual last team to actually win it was the Philadelphia 76ers. And so between also those last teams, between the Clippers, the Suns, the Jazz, the Nuggets, those teams didn't win a championship. So you can see how important it was. In those last 8 teams, you had about half the teams, a little bit more than half, because that's 5 of the teams, never won a championship. And so you had a lot of fan bases really believing. And so that's why I believe, the word out, we know that the ratings have been a little bit higher in the playoffs this season. And I think that some of that intrigue of some of these fan bases who, may not get the chance every year to go so far in the playoffs. And I think that, that has helped the situation out tremendously. And so, yeah, those last 4, like I said, the Clippers, Suns, Jazz, Nets, Nuggets, never won a championship. Obviously, the Suns are going to have opportunity here as we are embarking on, the start of the championship matchup this week. And then the 76ers, they've won 3. They were the last team, remember, I said 1983 to win 38 years ago. They have 3 total championships. The Hawks have 1, and the Bucks have 1 championship. So none of these teams have won a lot of championships. None of these teams have been dominant teams in the history of the NBA. So this is why, as far as fan bases, this is going to be good for the NBA, because a team that doesn't usually win is going to be crowned an NBA champion this season. And I think that's just good for the NBA moving forward. And like I said, we'll see if next season some of these contenders that were favorites can actually pull it off. But yeah, like I said, this is definitely one of the first seasons I can honestly sit there and say that I've witnessed an NBA playoffs and couldn't predict who the final teams were going to be. So, or at least one of them, you know what I mean? So this is just one of those few times that this has ever happened for me in a long time. And like I said, once again, my opinion that, the NBA playoffs overall, despite the injuries, have been good for the NBA moving forward. And so we'll see what happens in the rest of the way. But it's just one of those things where I feel like we'll see how all these teams bounce back, but there's going to be a lot more drama. There's going to be a lot more soap opera. We'll see how the Nets bounce back with their injuries. They should be coming back healthy, and they're still going to be a contender. We're going to see how the Lakers retool. They should come back strong, and they should be a contender. The Clippers, we'll see what happens with Kawhi. My guess is he stays, but we'll see how they bounce back. We'll see how, the Suns and the Bucks, the Hawks got a young team coming up, so we'll see how, how that core progresses. So if you're an NBA fan, the NBA has got a bright spot because a lot of these young stars are not coming along. Luka, Trae Young, Devin Booker. A lot of these young stars are starting to come into their own and starting to step up to the plate where the torch can be passed to them. And that's a good sign for the NBA. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to be in a situation where Kevin Durant, LeBron, Kawhi phase out and you don't got dominant stars that are taking over. So, the Zion Williamsons of the world. So there's, Ja Morant's. I like what I'm seeing from a lot of these young guys, and a lot of these young guys, they got heart. You know what I'm saying? They got some fire in their bones. So I think it's exciting for the NBA moving forward. The NBA has to find a way to continue I feel like this was season, and, this is a season that you can say, the Nets, tilted the scales once they did that James Harden trade. Overall, you could kind of say there's a lot of parity in the NBA because most teams, have at least one big gun or 2 big guns. The Nets have 3 big guns, what I'm saying? So that gives them a little bit of advantage, obviously, but, there's a lot of parity in the NBA, and I think that's good for the NBA, and hopefully they can keep the super teams away as much as possible and keep this parity going on. Teams are going to be teams, and listen, if a team's able to pull off the trade to get elite players together, hey, if they do it under the cap and the system, then I guess it's all fair, love, and war. But, I kind of want to see a well-balanced league because I just think that it makes the games a lot more exciting. For the most part, these playoffs were exciting. You had only a few series where it was really lopsided, but most of these series have been pretty close where teams are winning 4-2, you know what I mean? Or they're winning, 4-3. You know what I mean? Most of the series, that's what you saw, and that's what you have seen. And I think for the most part, that's been a really good look for the NBA. You know what I mean? So with that said, once again, it's your boy, Kingcal516, the one and only host of the Swish Flames podcast. Once again, make sure you check us out on Twitter at Swish Flames. You can check me out on Twitter at Kingcal516. Don't forget to check the website, www.swishflames.com. Make sure you follow. Make sure you support the show. Peace out, and all the best for everybody out there